Good morning, friends. Hello, hello. I know we're a minute or two on the far side of things here. Good morning, Kristen. How are you? Hope you're doing well. Jamie, hope you're all right in these days. Good morning. Hola. Hey, Kristen. Hope everybody's doing all right this morning. A little mug up, a little coffee time. So glad we get to kind of hang out here for a little bit for another year. So fun. Thanks for being here and being on this journey. Hey, Irene. Good morning to you. You've all been in my prayers up there. I hope healing and goodness is happening and finding its way. The rain cometh. Yes, there is rain. There is rain coming. Good morning, Yvette. Glad you're here. Good morning, everybody. All right, we'll give it one. I see one or two more people coming, and then we'll get going this morning. All right, friends. Let's get going this morning. It is the 9th day of January in 2024. And this day, on this Tuesday, we come back for another 11:11. And I'm glad that you're here and I'm glad you're a part of this journey. That each one of you, whether you're hearing my voice live right now, whether we're kind of together in spirit in this moment, or you are catching this at some other time in some other place, welcome. I pray that it is a blessing to you today and that there's just some goodness in your day. You know, just something good, some sweetness that finds you on your journey. That we kind of as pilgrims together maybe get to share in it. So we are at kind of the beginning of a year, and one of the things that often happens in this Epiphany time is that we kind of talk about the beginning of things, right? We have for those who are resolution makers, we make resolutions. For those of us who are part of the who are kind of working through anything, we kind of come out of this holiday season and we're kind of back to work, whatever it is. Even if we're retired, if we don't work professionally, there's still this way of kind of coming back to it and getting our shoulder back in and getting reengaged. And so, we're kind of at the beginning of things. And so I want to talk a little bit about the beginning of things. And I think there's wisdom in looking at the beginning of some of Jesus's ministry, some of the ways that Jesus's ministry begins. And this one kind of spoke to me this morning. And so we're going to talk about this from the Gospel of Mark. And the Gospel of Mark's a little different than the other Gospels. And it's not just how they begin, but it's about how Jesus's ministry begins, which is what we're really looking at. Is in Luke, there is this way in which Jesus's ministry begins with a teaching. Like he tells everybody what to do. And in the Gospel of John, it's a party that begins with a wedding at Cana. That there's this beginning miracle with the wine. In the Gospel of Mark, it's a little bit different. There is the beginning is, and I think it tells us something about our own entry. Not into just new things and new things in general, but even our own entry into our re-engagement with Spirit and our re-engagement with our own spiritual path. And so in Mark, we find this. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. The people were amazed at his teaching because he taught them as one who had authority, not as teachers of the law. And just as a man in the synagogue who was possessed by an impure spirit cried out, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." "Be quiet," said Jesus sternly. "Come out of him." And the impure spirit shook the man violently and came out of him with a shriek. This teaching begins with that Jesus' ministry in the Gospel of Mark begins with the removal of an unclean spirit. This removal of this unclean spirit that he confronts in Capernaum, and it's because he shows up not as a teacher, not with the guy with all the right answers, but he shows up with one as authority. And as this authority shows up, and as he shows up in authority, there is this way in which all of it is confronted with this unclean spirit. And I want to suggest to you, and this is kind of a long way to get to this, and it might seem like a simple point, but I actually think, and with maturity, we tend to discount this, I think. Once we get a little older, get a little gray in our beard, we're like, oh, this is just a thing that happens. But I think for many of us, particularly in this age, particularly in what's going on these days, because, you know, there's just a little more resistance to everything these days. It's a little bit harder to get moving. It's a little bit harder to do things. That whenever we strike out in moving closer to that which is true and good and beautiful in our world, this is kind of the metaphor for, not even the metaphor, the reality of what it is for Jesus's of life to come into our life, is that we move closer to the true and the good and the beautiful in our life. That's what it looks like. We're a little bit happier. We know a little bit more joy. We have a little bit more peace in our days. We puzzle less a little bit about the answers to things. We grind ourselves to dust about the worrying around things because we have a knowing and that the things are at peace, or there's this way in which as we come closer that our life simply looks a little more dressed up. It's a little more beautiful, that we can actually experience that in the course of our days. All of these are kind of the components of what this looks like, and that the setting out into that inherently brings with it this encounter with an unclean spirit. Now, friends, it's going to dress itself up in a whole lot of different ways for many of us, but it always confronts us. One of the greatest books, it's on my top 5 books, is a book called The War of Art. And it's by a man by the name of Stephen Pressfield. And Stephen Pressfield, he's the guy who wrote The Ledger of Bangor Vance, if you've ever heard of that, seen that movie and that book. He's a really great author. But I think this work that he talks about, which he talks about the resistance, that when you sit to write, there is the resistance that shows up for him as an author. And he spends this time talking about the war of what it is to bring his creative vision into world, and that the resistance is just the resistance. That the unclean spirit is just the unclean spirit. And that when we show up with authority in our life saying, I want to go this way, that God calls me to go this way, just like Jesus does in this first outing in Capernaum. When he's called into that place and he shows up in that place with this sense of this is who God has called me to be in this place, not with all the answers. Not that he's showing up teaching, but he's not showing up teaching with all the answers. He's showing up teaching with authority. That when we move into spaces in our life, we will inherently hit the resistant. If you do nothing else from this and you want to take up the book, The War of Art, I submit to you, it will change you as a book. At least it did me, in terms of understanding what this unclean spirit is that shows up when we begin to move in our spirit towards the true, the good, and the beautiful, which for Pressfield as an author, that's his venue and that's his place. But each one of us have our own place and our own venue, but that doesn't mean that the struggle is different. It's actually very similar. That this confrontation means a letting go of something that possesses us for a new reality. Because there's all kinds of language. Who am I to do this thing? Who do I think I am? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are to be able to do these things that God has called you to do? Who do you think you are to be a little closer to the true and the good and the beautiful? What am I? And all of the doubts that come with that. You know, am I smart enough to do this? Am I wise? Am I able to do this new thing which I step into? You know, and there's all these different ways. You know, some of us will quit. We'll just say, some of us will procrastinate. Oh yeah, someday I'm going to do that thing. Someday I'm going to do that thing. Some of us will cry victim. You know, some of us will say, you know, it's just, I've had too much in my life. I've had too many things happen. It's been too hard. I have trauma. And this is not to, don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not downplaying the fact that we have real issues and we have real things to work through and we have really hard things that have happened in our life. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that is still not an excuse for showing up with the authority that Christ has given you in this particular hour, in this particular place, to bring the particular goodness and the particular love and the particular truth and the particular beauty that you bring to this hour in this moment. That is still not an excuse for us not to bring it. But it is the voice of the demon that will say, "Oh, you've had it hard. You can't do that." It's the voice of the consent. You know, we're often possessed by the yes demon. This is one of mine, actually, that we can get possessed by the unclean spirit of yes. We can just agree to the things that are going on around us. You know, we want the people in our lives to be happy with us. We want to make the people in our lives happy with us. And we can just like, oh yeah, that's okay. We can go, yeah, we'll do that. We'll give our time, talent, and treasure to that, rather than the thing that God has called us to show up to with authority. Not with all the answers, but to simply be who we are, planted in this place to say, God has called me to this new teaching. You know, we can get caught up that sometimes the demon can look like expectations, right? Because this isn't what it's supposed to look like. It didn't look like this in the brochure. I don't like that. I don't want to go over there. Like that doesn't look right. And so we put ourselves in such a place where the expectations of what we thought we were going to get, we quickly withdraw. You know, Jesus shows up to the temple in Capernaum and teaches there, and everybody goes, "Holy smokes, who is this guy?" Because he is one that teaches with authority, not with all the answers. And he teaches with authority, and he shows up as a beloved child of God, as the beloved child of God, as God incarnate in the space, and that God calls us to do the same. And that it matters less how it's working out than how the teaching was going than it does how he was managed. And then sometimes we can just avoid it, right? Sometimes we can just say, "Oh gosh, I don't wanna." You know, we can do all the dishes. We can arrange all the sofa cushions. We can just avoid the thing, the true, the good, and the beautiful that God is calling us to in our life. Now, I don't know what God's calling you to. And I'm not saying this is a big, and the thing is, this is the thing to remember. This is the beginning of Jesus's ministry. This is not the whole thing. This is not the end times. This is not, this is one guy standing in one place at one time in one moment of time. And that God has the same call for us. You in this day and in this hour, God has one call for you to stand in this place, in this hour, to bring more of the true and the good and the beautiful into this moment right now, and to stand there with authority. And you will inevitably encounter the resistance. You will inevitably encounter the unclean spirit that is within us. Friends, I don't know what it is that God's calling you to right now. And I don't even know the way that unclean spirit shows up. But what I do know is that the words of that spirit have a whole lot more to say. Are you here to destroy us? Like, do we have to purge ourselves of this, do we have to make ourselves pure in thought, word, and deed in order to act, in order to be in this place, in order to just be happy with it, even just to be happy with ourselves on any given day? No. We're not there to destroy it. We're not there to drive it back in. We're simply there to remove it. Simply there to, and not even to remove it, but just to set it aside. Just, what does Jesus say? So just go out of him. Just go out of here. Just not here, not today. My friend Jeremy has a great hat, which I love, which, on particular, you know the kind of day he's having when he wears it. He says, "Not today, Satan." Well, friends, not today. Begin, as the great, Lewis Carroll said in Alice in Wonderland, when Alice was asking for directions and asking where to go, well, begin at the beginning and go all the way to the end. Friends, today, I know it's an old cliche, but it is the first day of the rest of your life. It's not untrue. It is the first day of what God is calling. It is the day that God is calling you to bring into this world your authority, who you are, created in the image of God, made in the image of God, placed in this place to bring more of the true and the good and the beautiful into the world, to stand in the temple, to stand in your own temple and to stand in your own teaching. And again, not to have all the answers, but to stand there as one who is called to bring the true and the good and the beautiful into the world and to let it do its work. C.S. Lewis said of Aslan, which was the idea of what Christ was in Narnia, in his Narnia series. He says that Aslan was a good lion. Is he good? Oh yes, he's very good. Well, is he safe? Oh no, he's not safe at all. Friends, to stand in this place might not feel safe. It might feel uncertain, but it is powerful and it's strong because you stand in the place of the one who made you. You stand in the place of the God who came into the world to be as you are, so that you may be as he is, and that you may bring a little more of the true and the good and the beautiful into your life right now. Don't let the unclean spirit of the start, don't let the unclean spirit of the day, whatever it shows up as, to hold back you standing in the authority that Christ Jesus has given you. You don't have to go to war with it. You don't have to carve it up. You don't have to break it into smash it into 1,000 pieces. You don't have to purge it, purge your soul of purity. You just have to set it aside, cast it out. Not today, procrastination. Not today, avoidance. Not today, victimhood. But today, the true authority and the life and the beauty and the joy of Christ Jesus in your heart. All right, friends, that's my hope for you today. Peace and grace to you all, and I hope you have a wonderful day. John, great to see you here. Stephanie, so great to see you. Robin, hello. Donna, great, glad you're here. Anybody else I missed? I didn't get to say. Jim Pereira, everybody. James NMI Pereira. Sharon, good morning to you. Irene, you guys are so in my heart and in my prayers. If you don't know, Irene's daughter had a pretty severe accident, I think last week. Please keep Jen in your prayers. All right, peace and grace to you all, and we'll pick it up tomorrow with another 11:11.